Peace and blessings. This is Unplug 'em. Here's a little lightweight jam that I do hope to fall in line with the same series that we've been doing concerning dealing with healing. This is a little bit more geared toward the brothers and the young men. Uh, it is a lightweight jam in some respects. When I was a young man, I was a fan of wrestling. I had the wrestling men. Uh, Some just came to mind. I had the wrestling men like a lot of us did, and even went to go see a WrestleMania when they had it at Joe Louis Arena. When they had Joe Louis Arena, was it the Pontiac Silverdome? Pontiac Silverdome. Went to go see that WrestleMania, and of course did go to a what was it, a Friday night main event, I think it was, at Joe Louis Arena. That's what it was. And the wrestling thing was popular in Detroit, like it is in a lot of working class towns. Well, what it is about wrestling is it's part of behavior modification mind control programming, especially aimed at males. It is essentially a soap opera for men. So now, what you find also is some level of idolatry of the entertainers who portray the roles, oftentimes alter ego, mind controlled uh, victims who portray these roles, give up their bodies in order to do so. I don't know if any of you saw the documentary about Jake the Snake. Jake the Snake out there bad, smoking crack and everything. And yeah, for real. And so when I heard the news today from a friend of mine who always tells me something about wrestling. Now, let me tell you something. I done stopped watching wrestling about over a decade or more when WWE was still WWF. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that name change was really made too. But it's deeper than an ocean, and it's deeper than an ocean. So we're going to look at some things that came to light as it was brought to my attention that Ultimate Warrior has been made a ritual sacrifice. And for those who don't know, Ultimate Warrior is an iconic figure from back in those days when Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat and uh, Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan and all of them was the big deal. And even Junkyard Dog, which was one of the most racist depictions of black men I ever seen, along with Kamala. Kamala was right next to it. Uh, but you know, brothers got to eat. No, ain't no excuse. The programming done by wrestling, not only, not on, and as I say wrestling, by wrestling, not on. That's why talk to text don't work for me. Not only is used for your obvious mind control programming of the violent spirit in young men. I can remember me and Rob, I forget his last name, maybe I shouldn't say it, suplex Marcus in the gym locker room because we was watching wrestling and we was geeked up about main event. And we did a two-man suplex. We suplexed this young man. At the time we was all the same age and broke his leg. How we didn't get in worse trouble, I don't even, you know what, I do remember. He didn't snitch on us. Good looking out Marcus Brown. But I guess I just dry snitched on myself. 20 years and 30 years later. Anyway. But my point is, young men take that stuff to heart. I remember people getting messed up doing the figure four, leg lock, and doing the DDT, and all those different type of things. You know, you're teaching young men in the most violent nation in the world how to become more violent, especially you know the young kids in the ghetto who don't need any additional ways to hurt each other, but do look up to some form of masculine father figure for a lack thereof. And not just in the ghetto, but in the trailer parks and just all across America, even in suburban America where the father's actually in the home, but he's so busy oftentimes that he's not really making a connection with the children and with his sons. And so his sons, just like in the ghetto, end up raising themselves with father figures and masculine role models that are given to them by pop culture. And what we're learning more and more is that those same masculine, or what we think is masculine role models, are really not so masculine at all. And that's one of the things that made me want to do this video on Ultimate Warrior, because I remember some years back, and not a lot of years, maybe 2 or 3, being turned on by the same brother who told me about his death today, which, you know, his death happened yesterday, but I learned about it on 4/9, which would be 13, which is when most people will hear about it. It'll be all over the news on the 9th of April. Again, we're still in the blood, quote unquote, astrological sign. The color is red for war, and war for blood. And so it's a high sacrifice season, the season of spring. The belief of some cultures was that if you sacrifice during this time, it will ensure a good crop, a good harvest. Because this is the time when you plant seeds, right? The ground is just now softening up from the death season, quote unquote, of winter time, where the ground is hard and nothing can grow. So lots of sacrificial things occur. This is a time of sacrifice. War is a time of sacrifice. And so that's why you'll find, I'm sure that this will be one of many that we'll hear about on the heels of Mickey Rooney's death. Even before Mickey Rooney's death, we had Harold Ramis, who played Egon from Ghostbusters, and also got into the directing chair in Hollywood. And it's one thing to be on the casting couch and move to the directing chair. That means that you're really complicit in different things that you have to do to move up in Hollyweird. Believe it. So this came across my desk, quote unquote, and I said, well, now how does this have to do with what I'm dealing with? And sometimes that's what I want to jump on when the brother brings me certain things, but it's always to the glory of God when he reveals a thing, and to the glory of kings, excuse me, when he conceals a thing, and to the glory of kings when he reveals it and allows them to reveal it. And so I you know, in being patient, I listened, and the Holy Spirit began to talk and told me, well, this is part of dealing with healing. A lot of people are bound. You know, my brother is not much younger than I am, and he's still you know, an avid viewer of wrestling. I try to avoid the term fan. It's okay if you use it, but I know that comes from fanatic and fan addict, but fanatical, you know, is what fan comes from. And you know, again, you know, I apologize for the low production value. This is you know, ghetto Morpheus, baby. This is not uptown Morpheus. This is not downtown Morpheus. This is not penthouse Morpheus. This is ghetto Morpheus, and every project is going to be project style. So please believe it, and with the chip tooth smile. And so you know, if you can't stand it, it's a button for that. But you know, for those who can, I appreciate it. They want effects, some live effects, but you know, I do appreciate y'all putting up with this low budget thing. It's on a smudget budget, but it's still effective, and that's, to God be the glory for that. So anyway, so let's deal a little bit with the mind control programming of wrestling and the Ultimate Warrior sacrifice, and some of the satanic things that go in and on in the wrestling genre. And of course, the king of the thing, who is a bloodline guy, which shows you some sort of familial family ties. Makes you look at that title of that show in a whole nother light, doesn't it? But Vince McMahon's dad was the man, and they have together, his family has run wrestling for decades. When I was a tyke and watching wrestling, he was the man. And I remember Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I used to pick up those magazines and read them and idolize these guys in little tight shorts, not knowing that this is part of a subconscious mind programming. When my brother had brought over to me one time, we was having a cipher, And he brought some things for the cipher. I would always encourage that when brothers would meet, you know, at my crib, and we were gonna have a session. They would bring things that they wanted to discuss or show to other brothers, and so he had brought some old WWF stuff that he had, and just out of fun and folly, I said, well, I used to watch it. Leave it here. Let me check it out. We didn't get on that lightweight jam that day, so it didn't get displayed. But I asked him, would he let me check it out? And he did. And I remember watching. I was geeked up and ready to watch Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat, because I had remembered how Pro Wrestling Illustrated and all the propaganda had made that out to be, oh, this was one of the greatest matches in all time. Propaganda is a powerful tool. And so I sat there with my foolish self and put on the DVD and thought I was fixing to be entertained, and I was filled with disdain, because I began to see how homo-erotic this whole thing was, and I couldn't even enjoy the match because I kept thinking to myself, how did I miss this as a kid? Well, for one thing, as a child, you're not consciously focused on that, and then secondly, the part that was really ticking me off was that they was doing this to my young mind when I didn't even know what time it was. And so I really felt game goofy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I didn't get fooled twice. I popped it on out the DVD player real nice. But and threw it into the sea of forgetfulness forever, and haven't even revisited the whole thing again since. And so that's why sometimes I get irritated when the brother would hit me with, well, yeah, this happened in wrestling, that happened in wrestling. But it's deeper than a notion, and I apologize for ever being short with you about that, my brother Shotty Piper. So Tuesday evening, we were told that Ultimate Warrior collapsed, which of course that would be that he died on 4/8, and we know the fixation between duality here, and we're going to look at duality, pardon me, and how it played a huge part in this whole thing. And my apologies too to folks out there who come to my channel if ever I'm too sharp or too many zingers or whatnot. Everybody doesn't learn that way, and everybody doesn't take the tough love the way that you might want to give it. And the way you give love is a result of how it was given. And I just have to just take responsibility for that, and in knowing that some of the people in my life who I really looked up to and loved, part of showing that love would be a way of zinging you and stinging you. My grandma Jackson, she was on top of that, please believe it. And so I do that, and I do it out of habit, and every habit that we have is not something that we should have. Just because it's a habit don't mean you should have it. So I apologize for that, and this is a ministry, and it's about healing. And if at the end of the day what you say is hurtful in some way, shape, or form, without giving the medicine, then you're not healing. You're hurting, and I don't mean to do that. So I ain't the greatest thing since pockets. I make mistakes, and I'm man enough to admit it. But again, we looked at this Ultimate Warrior thing because I knew that there was something that he had brought out some years ago on YouTube, and by the time I got around to watching it, I believe they had done something to it, because the reports I was getting about it was a little different than when I first saw it. Now, sometimes that can just be because people aren't always given accurate reports when they give reports. Sometimes they give reports with their own opinions laced in, or with mistakes or misinformation laced in with it. And sometimes that's very innocent and unintentional, but it still happens. Even with somebody had given me a report about that not too long ago. Well, no, when I told the story about Dr. York and how I ended up going down to the land inadvertently, because I was told a story about he had a gray in captivity on the land. That's what got me and my ex-girl very powerful, strong sister who was down enough to say, well, let's go. That's how we ended up going down there on the fly. It was because somebody had given me the wrong report and said, well, he's got a grade out there. But how do you know unless you check a thing out? And I'm that type of guy. So I had heard the report that Ultimate Warrior was talking about the Beat It ritual. What's the Beat It ritual? Well, supposedly, and well, not even supposedly, I know that the ritual does exist, and there's even a documentary that David Icke and Chris Everard had done where they show pictures from some old magic books where they show you an illustration of a homosexual sex ritual. But there are different types of rituals done, and there are different types of magical spells or workings. It's working. That's another name for a spell or a ritual. Crowley, in fact, Aleister Crowley, the leading Satanist of the past 20th century, he preferred to use the term working. Paris working, Babylon working. These were two of his more noted workings. But there's a particular working that people believe that Michael Jackson was really singing about in the song Beat It, without being vulgar, and nobody on here is slow, and I mean that in the way of slow to pick up on what's being put down. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of triple OGs on here. Not a lot of game goofy goobers. There's a couple. So we can pick up on what that means without going into things. But Crowley himself was a admitted bisexual man, and he had found that some of the more powerful workings could only be done with homosexual sex magic. So you've got a lot of different people who title their albums some sort of sex magic or some sort of sexy magic. Well, this was also going on in the WWF at the time. That's what it was when I was growing up, and there's a reason why they changed the name different than what we were told. And then too, you've got the WW, which is, we know that's 66 fallen. But again, I digress. So Ultimate Warrior had claimed that he and Vince McMahon and Hogan and other ones, had been involved in this particular working where men generate energy. There's a way that they're told that you can use the energy, the twilight energy, like we talked about the twilight power before. There's the twilight of in between wake and sleep. There's the twilight of in between day and night. And there's the twilight of in between erection and ejaculation. Yeah. And in this particular magic working, they believe that power, that anticipatory power that a man or, that a woman feels in that in-between state is a power, a time, if you will, where energy is high and one can access the spirit realm, which is just code speak, new age code speak for the demonic realm. So we have in the WWF and in the music business with Mike, if there's truth to that Beat It thing, I know that there was a guy who did a whole video on that, and I remember when it was first brought to my attention, I dismissed it. Please know that I am a skeptic at heart. I test the thing out, believing that it will be found untrue, just as I did with the name Jesus. And then, because I'm not the dullest knife in the drawer, I go ahead and bear witness when I see, well, I was wrong. And, that's what anybody would do with the sense of a shoe. So, Ultimate Warrior had made some videos on YouTube, and I'm sure that a lot of them have been scrubbed. And by the time I got to this one, it was scrubbed, and it looked to me like a very bad, chopped, edited collection of quips from one interview put together to make it sound like that's what he was talking about. But because I know it's chess, not checkers, and you got to test the spirit by the spirit, I said to myself, now if this were true, is Vince McMahon and his family powerful enough to get this video scrubbed, chopped and screwed, misconstrued, and slapped back so it can be reviewed? And so as I reviewed it, I felt my spidey senses tingling, and the Holy Ghost began to tell me, no, this is true. They're trying to make it look like it's untrue. So, okay. Kept that in my back pocket, didn't know what to do with it. But just to add it to what I already knew, wrestling is fake, and why do I care about it anyway? So as the time went on, and you know, I remember too, not Ultimate Warrior, Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan was supposed to be foes, right? Mortal enemies. And in the Detroit newspaper, they had got caught in downtown Detroit after some wrestling event. It might have been after a main event, because they had a couple of them in Detroit. Detroit was a big market for the WWF, because again, blue collar people are more prone to throw their unused passions behind a football team or behind wrestling to burn off some energy. You know, they work hard physical labor jobs in industrial towns, and so their need and desire to release when they do have time off makes for activities like this to be much more popular in places like that. I bet you that in quieter towns where there are more jobs in, let's say, less strenuous forms of work, wrestling's not as popular. Football's not as popular. But again, it tends to go hand in hand with blue collar people. Everybody knows that, okay? You know, what's understood ain't got to be explained. So anyway, so Ultimate Warrior was on my mind as a potential outer of the Illuminati. I would always keep in my mind a catalog of people who would speak out. DMX, you know, when he said, to you young rappers, young singers, try to join the business, he said, do not be a part of the game. You know, the things Pac said in So Many Tears, and in a couple of interviews, some of which have been misconstrued as part of the project to make him a black messiah or a false messiah, where they take some of his words that weren't really anti-Illuminati and try to make them sound like they were, such as when he said, you know, he was in jail and the brother showing you, oh, the dollar. Right there, he's clowning on those brothers. So, you know, we got to take everything in the proper context too. But anyway, I was keeping a log of people who did speak out, and Ultimate Warrior was one of those people, so he kind of stayed on my mind. So now when I'm told last night he dropped dead, apparently, you know, out of the blue, he collapses and dies. And this is the second or third day after WrestleMania, and about the third or fourth day after he's inducted into the Hall of Fame. I know this ain't no game, but they play it the same. So it made me look at this thing a little sideways. So let's just run down through some things. I'm going to go down through the paper because this is, again, there's bigger fish to fry. So we're not going to spend too much time on this, you and I. We're going to go ahead and break it down and break down some things involving the mind control program of entertainment. You know, some things that maybe, you know, you've seen spread out through other videos. If I can just maybe, Lord willing, condense them, have mercy. So we're going to try. I need to get right or get left. All right. We're going to try to be about it right quick, so I'll be without it. So, also I thought about the, I had to write down this note because when I was told the story I was taking notes as I was told the story, so my notes followed the way the story was told to me. And then, I didn't have a chance or really much motivation to sit down and work them back out and make them for you guys to see. So just to show you too the difference when it's for me and when it's for you. This is when it's for me. Not so neat and pretty. Don't look quite like a picture, now does it? You see some scratch outs, and well, I guess it ain't too bad maybe compared to some folks, but when it's for you, it comes out with no scratch outs, and that's because I'm not writing it for you. The Holy Spirit do, and all praise is due to the Most High for that. Truly, one of the lesser known or lesser spoken of gifts that God gives is the gift of writing, and it's becoming a lost art. And if not for the scribes, we wouldn't have the scriptures. Script, scribe, same thing. All right, turn the P upside down. You can do it. Put your mind into it. So, Dave Chappelle and Eddie Murphy. How does this go together? Slow your roll, bro. Dave Chappelle and Eddie Murphy told a lot of boule secret jokes. In other words, as they were let into the upper echelon, they saw some stuff that as comedians and real brothers at the time, they thought was a little funny. And I mean Fred Sanford funny too. And they incorporated some of that stuff into their jokes. I got a whole thing about the prophecies of Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle ended up prophesying that there would be a black president, that he would be related to Bush. Two different things. He did two different black president skits. One, the Black Bush, and we know Obeezy related to 6 U.S. presidents. And then the other was that the black president would be used to introduce us to Bibble for Shizzle, which was the aliens, which we of course know aliens come from hell. Like one of my favorite documentaries here on YouTube. Excellent documentary. Love it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But and that's the level of stuff I'm trying to deal with. I appreciate everything everybody sends me, especially you, Big Boss Cross, because you send me things that I've just all but mentally lost, because it's usually not a surprise, but it do be a reminder, and I appreciate all reminders, because there's a way in this warfare that I'm charged to wage, my battalion being intelligence, that I need to know certain things that I don't ascribe to as my personal practice, but I need to understand all of the ways of the enemy and stay tight on my 720, or else you could lose it. Use it or lose it. So Chappelle did his thing in sneaking out some true stuff by way of jokes. Even the Oprah thing. How did he end up banging Oprah? Because they have celebrity sex rituals, and if she's a sex high priestess, which she would be, and of course she used to be, she was a beauty queen. Beauty queens are used for that. Come on, let's heavyweight jam a little taste, even in the lightweight jam. It's not flyweight, it's lightweight. So of course that would help bring to bear how he could come up with that particular joke. And let's relate that now to this. In the Hall of Fame ceremony for the World Wrestling, what did the E stand for now? Entertainment. But it used to be for the WWF. When Mr. T was involved, it was a WWF. And of course, Mr. T made it to Hollywood from the gangs of Chicago. And we know that there's a connection between gang life at the top, and he would have been at the top, and what? Secret societies. Even when I look at Tookie Williams and I see his admiration for himself and for his body, and that what they would call the sign of Leo minded way, which Hulk Hogan really exemplified, born on 8/11. I thought to myself, that same deal that they gave or that they offered to Huey P. Newton, a brother who's too vain, glorious, would probably take. You'd probably love to see yourself up on the big screen. And they know how to use pride to get you inside. You know, when they can't use nothing else, they can use pride. And so you find a lot of prideful dudes that get drawn into Hollywood and, of course, into the WWF. So, you know, I mean, you call yourself Jesse the Body. You know, you're a little bit of an egomaniac. And if you haven't picked that up about Jesse the Body, I don't know what to say for you. So Mr. T probably had that issue too. He went from gangland to bodyguarding and bouncing to Hollywood. So he was willing to do different things they needed done. And if you're willing to take on a particular level of violent spirit, please believe it. The way the spirits run, they know how to outsmart you and how one will bring on another one. And even without your intentional conjuring, once you allow for one to take you over so much, denial will set in. You know, you do so much violence and killing, or so much dirt crime-wise. In order to sleep at night, denial will come in. You will deny so that you can sleep at night, so you don't be constantly running back and forth through your mind the images of what you've had to go on through. Even military men who have had to kill have spoken about that, how you have to kind of create a place of denial, or else every time you go to sleep you'll be thinking about the faces that you saw of people that you had to murk. So that being said, looking at Mr. T being brought into the Hall of Fame and all of his connections, his name up high in the game, it made me revisit Eddie's gay joke on him, his affiliation with the wrestling gang, which is highly homoerotic. Now, again, we said it used to be the WWF, and I'm sorry, that just broke somebody's face. It wasn't comfortable for me to think about. You know, we saw Mr. T paraded in front of us by the maniac devils in action, the media, maniac evil devils in action. We saw them put him up, prop him up. And remember, if they prop you up in this world, the devil is the prince of this world. He's the prince of the power of the air. So if they put you in the airwaves and they prop you up, you're probably not part of the revolution. Just saying. So it was a mistake to see him and to allow for him to be placed in our mind as a role model. And, you know, of course, a lot of people did see through that. A lot of people saw his buffoonery as something that would make him anathema to role models. And then there were others who heard about the Africa. Oh, well, I wear these chains because this is to represent my African heritage. No, you wore them chains because you was a arrogant, egotistical thing. And that's why you wanted to be on TV and be seen, and you got so tickled from people talking to you in interviews, you had a little gay laugh. I'm sorry. Somebody's upset. Don't be upset with me. Don't hate the player. Hate the game. Okay, so they put Mr. T in the Hall of Fame for WWE, which used to be the WWF until Prince Albert and I would say Ted Turner, who are running buddies for the World Wildlife Federation, said, okay, like arrogant people would, we can't have our stuff with the same name as yours, which is one reason why I can't buy that Monica Crowley and Candy Crowley and Crowley's department store in Detroit have nothing to do with Aleister Crowley. I can't look at Candy Crowley and believe that. Now, people got so on to that. See, when the devil put his stuff in your face, it's to make you do the double think and make you see that it's him and ignore it and still pick it anyway, so that it creates a denial in you. Denial is their thing. They like denial because that's the strongman demon. Once denial is set up in you, they can pile all kind of other demons behind that. And if you can't get through denial, if you can't get into admission, you'll never go to the spittle. Believe it, you won't be healed, not even a little. So, Lord have mercy, I'm just all over the place. But so Prince Albert and Ted Turner go hard and say, well, you know, we are the World Wildlife Federation, which is the way of controlling wildlife along the same lines as Monsanto's is the way of controlling agriculture and our food ultimately, seeds and whatnot, and the role that Roundup plays and all of that. Well, just think of the WWF as being the Illuminati way of trying to control wildlife, and wildlife at that. And you think about the wildlife of the WWE, as it is now called. And I remember when they made the change, I did not think they would survive the change. That just showed how little I knew about the Illuminati. Usually in business, when you have a brand name for so long, so established as the WWF had, there's no way that you would have to change. Their brand name was so established, they should not have had to have been the ones that changed, except for the fact they was in the Illuminati game and they was lower down the chain of the gang. Believe it. So they couldn't hang with Prince Albert and Ted Turner. Now, there was controlled opposition created by way of Ted Turner for Vince McMahon, who would have that monopoly. So again, it's a way that they play both ends against the middle, when at the same time they both being burnt by the same flame of Lucifer, keeping them both ignited. So Ultimate Warrior made a legal name change. He was going through a lot that would make anybody who studied mind control programming and Project Monarch victims say that he was one. He was crazier than Rando Macho Man Savage. Oh yeah, he was crazier than him. And Macho Man was out of his hookup. But Ultimate Warrior came into the WWF crazy as Dingo Warrior, right? I remember how he would come out. He was one of the more cut up dudes in the game. And you could imagine that those were the ones, and he wore face paint along the lines of Road Warriors. So you could imagine that those were the ones that butt burglars like Vince McMahon. Do you think Vince McMahon was pulling down his pants having dudes kiss his butt? If that's not, I don't know what is. So you could imagine that Ultimate Warrior was really going through it as a young man, you know, and I'm sure all of the sex games and homosexual magic that was going on at the WWE was used to help facilitate and exacerbate mind control. And without a doubt, Hulk Hogan was under mind control. First of all, Hulk is all about the mind control of changing from one to another, changing from David Banner or Bruce Banner into a reptilian being, into a demonic being, a demonically possessed individual. And Hulk Hogan exemplified that to the T. He went into his little signature thing was called going into the rage, where he would go from one to another. He would go from calm, I am a real American Hulk Hogan, to which I know, you know, so much of it was fakery, and so much of it was a result of having a psychotic mind control programming that would have you with a lunacy demon, lunacy spirit. Them dudes was out of their mind. You don't think Roddy Piper was out of his mind? Roddy Piper was so out of his mind, and obviously a member of the Scottish Rite, and he was also a big part of the racial behavior modification programming that the WWF really pushed back in them days. Remember when he hit Jimmy Superfly Snuka, wasn't it, with a coconut? He was clowning on the man's heritage, and I bet you he was, you know, looking back, Jimmy Snuka was probably a Latin American bro. He was probably a brown brother, and they played him, to be an islander, and just like Kamala. Kamala wasn't from no Africa, you know. Yeah, he came out not long ago, talked like a regular dude. I believe he's a Southern brother. But anyway, I digress like a mess. I'm a mess. So, Ultimate Warrior made a legal name change, which is a way of saying I'm so under mind control that I am my alter ego. Officially, legally. What's his real name? You might need to see it. And I don't know if you even can, because again, this is written in my real shorthand. His real name is Jim Hellwig. See it just about in the center of the screen? Spelled Hell wig. Now, that has to do with having demons on your mind. What's in the name? I'm not going to play that game. If you ain't seen it by now, if you don't know, you never know me. And that's the other Teddy. But he got caught up with one of them trannies, didn't he? LL. Lots of tranny rumors surrounding Cool J. Cool J. I used to think he was hardest, but I don't know now. But you stay in the Hollywood mix, you got to be a part of the tricks. But it's interesting how Teddy and Eddie both got caught up in that tranny thing, and through the connections that I had with different people that was in the business, I'd heard some things about some very macho dudes admittedly saying that once you get to a certain level of having had sex with 4-5 women and all the baddest women around, the next thing is you want to try something new. And you don't want to go gay, but you hear that nobody can get down like a tranny can get down. They had a best of both worlds type of mentality, and that's one way that they bring that gay stuff into the boule stuff. And I heard that about an athlete, the biggest, most giantest, Aristotelist athlete that you could think of, Shaquille O'Neal. Excuse me. But the mind control, the legal name change of Dingo Warrior. First he went from Dingo Warrior, then to Ultimate Warrior. Then, of course, he made the legal name change from his God-given name, Jim Hellwig, excuse me, Lord have mercy this evening, to Ultimate Warrior, legally. So that's mind control. I am my alter ego officially. He and Sting were partners. Another dude who had who wore a mask by way of paint, face paint. This is part of mind control. That also, even if you look at Tyson with his face thing, it's what Sting and Road Warriors and Ultimate Warrior was all doing, and it had to do with, and Dingo Warrior makes me think about Australia for some reason and the Aborigines, but it has to do with when tribal warriors would put on face paint in order to go into a thing of lycanthropy or to channel some deity or animal spirit. They would put on the face paint as representation of that other being on them. You got another being on you. Have mercy this evening. Is it flyweight or lightweight? So, behavior modification program, and it's about the energy vampires too. People are emotionally invested. Invested. What does that mean? Invested. Where your vest go? In your vest. Invested in your chest. So when you're invested in something, it's in your heart, it's in you. So you can be emotionally invested in your football team, in your favorite rapper, like some of you are, unfortunately. And you gotta forgive me, I just woke up, and so I came to y'all before I came to Zest and Dial. Forgive me. Bear with me for a while. But anyway, and I got that dry skin, so Lord have mercy, I'm telling y'all, all kind of things don't need to be told. Game should be sold, not told. No, that which I have freely I was given, so freely I give unto you. Silver and gold have I none. But anyway, so people are emotionally invested in their wrestling programs and in their favorite wrestlers and in watching WWE and WWF and whatnot. And that would be okay if not for the fact that there's something that they do with all of that spare energy. That who do with it? Well, I was just listening to Coast to Coast program. I believe Art Bell was still in charge of it before they ran him off and MK Ultra'd him up out of there and put this ex-cop MK Ultra lane on there that's on there now, who sound like he ain't the least bit interested in half of the topics. He used to really sound that way. They tightened him up, and I can say this because I listened to it all the time, almost every night at one time, and I heard the change over. I could tell the gradual change and switch from Art Bell being 100 to Art Bell being about 75 to Art Bell being up out of there. And George Norrie getting a hold of it and not really knowing what he was doing and really sounding like he didn't know what he was doing, and them screening calls a whole new type of way and just changing the show over to make it a real flyweight jam. So I was listening to it one time for the mind, and it might have been George, now that I think about it, but they was interviewing the dude that was supposed to be the president or the head of the Vampire Church of America. Say what? Yes, there's a Vampire Church of America, and my man was on there telling him about, well, nowadays the question was asked, do y'all still bite necks and drink blood, something along that line. So yeah, I think it was George Norrie asking some lightweight stuff, but the dude came back and said, well, nowadays we don't do that. It's a little unsanitary and unsafe, and you still have some old schools that still deal with that, but we can get energy. Blood is the life of the body, energy, life force. You lose all your blood, you lose all your energy, all your life force. When you give blood, you be low on energy. So they said we can get energy nowadays from other sources. So, well, what kind of sources? Well, our favorite sources is like sporting events, sports games, football games, wrestling matches would fall in that, and he said nightclubs, the clubs. The energy at clubs is off the chain, which brings a new meaning to that scene in the Matrix, not part one, I believe it was 2 or 3, where it spent a lot of time showing you that club scene, and you thought it was just they was appealing to the young, but it was more than that. They were appealing the young, appealing them back, peeling their wigs back, but they was also making note of the fact that that's a high energy time in the club, lots of sexual energy, sometimes violent energy. Detroit clubs, some might jump off, and so it's a lot of energy to draw from the club atmosphere. Well, the same thing with wrestling. You need to know that people are emotionally invested in something, especially in that way that they do. You don't get that emotionally invested when you're supposed to be praying or praising. You'll get louder if Undertaker lose for the first time at WrestleMania than you will if the Lord makes a reconnection with you in your real life, something that really need to be done. Let's say you and your auntie get back talking. I bet you'll be louder about Undertaker losing. You understand the point of what I'm saying? So we put a lot of emotional investment into something that really shouldn't have it, and wrestling is certainly in that category because it is, again, racist, homo-erotic, and violent spirit programming. Violence spirit programming. It's a soap opera for men. MK Ultra like a mug. So Ultimate Warrior made the video where he talked about the masturbation ritual. And it's interesting too that wrestling takes hold of a young man around the age that there's acceleration of thoughts concerning and surrounding masturbation and sexual frustration. And they even came out with Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, excuse me, around the time that I was in my adolescence and getting very revved up. Me So Horny and all of that, and Glow, and my VHS tapes was good to go. And, you know, back then you didn't have YouTube, where you could just dial up a twerking video like the young guys can do now, and, you know, go into a magical working all your own. So, but again, it's all part of Lucifer's harvesting of your energy, sapping your life force, taking your life force away from you. And ironically, those things will go together. You end up watching these men in shorts and whatnot, and tighty tights. And, you know, you may have heard about Brutus the Barber, Beefcake, and Hulk Hogan's outside of the ring relationship from Hulk Hogan's wife when she was trying to slander the man. But of course, that does not mean that everything she said was a lie. They was beefed out, and that happens sometimes. Truth can come out when you get beefed out. But anyway, I said all of that to say that yes, there's indeed a correlation between the violent spirit, the homoerotic spirit, and the homosexual spirit. You know, the homosexual spirit and homoerotic spirit is the same thing, but the violent spirit you would think would be anathema to it, when in reality all things of the devil can roll together. So you get so violent and so hard, you have such a hatred, you're so rough even toward women. You know, in the pimp game, there's a lot of homosexual energy there. Let's add that in there too. My old dude used to tell me about a pimp from Detroit named Delicious. And the old dude also told me, let me break some pimps' hearts out there. Real deal talk from real Detroit playing. Because my old dude knew what he was saying. He was one character, believe it, involved in a lot of things. But he also would tell me that the real down pimp, if a client, who oftentimes would come from the suburbs, would want a man, that's why the pimp would be as pretty and get as pretty as he can. Believe it. That's right. And I got a whole video on that, how that makes perfect sense. You know, you look at the prettiness of the pimps, even the scene in the Mac when Max Julian is schooling the sisters inside of where? A movie theater, which is a place where mind control goes on, perfect setting for mind control. And he's mind controlling those sisters. Is showing you then the connection between mind control, the effeminization of the pimp versus the gangster. You know, the prettiness of it all. You know, nothing wrong with a dude wanting to be handsome and smooth to a certain degree, but really that's for ladies to me. You know, prettifying yourself. You know, your nails all the same length and they shined up and French manicured, and you know, you're letting a man spray dye on your beard nowadays when you go into the barber shop. It ain't that serious, baby boy. And I mean baby boy. Have mercy. But to get right or get left. So let's now get to the meat of the thing. So Ultimate Warrior gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. Well, also there's something too that goes on with the video games. They put him on the cover, or they wanted to put him on the video game for the 2K14. Even though he had been beefed out with McMahon and separated from the accepted crew for some time because of his outing videos and because of his breaking of his programming. People break programming too. And once you break programming so much that they got to be through with you, that's when they do what they can do and try to do a ritual thing. And I believe it was all a setup to get him into the Hall of Fame and then kill him. Ironically, now he died Tuesday evening. He collapsed. Saturday night, he's inducted into the Hall of Fame this last Saturday. And then, of course, Sunday was WrestleMania. And the timing of these things also is what can help bring one to the conclusion or the knowledge that ritual sacrifice is afoot. Now, Vince gave a creepy message to the inductees before the Hall of Fame. Okay, when Ultimate Warrior does his Hall of Fame speech, he says something to the effect of, "His people in the front row, it might be uncomfortable." Now, Vince McMahon's wife inducts him. Linda McMahon inducts Ultimate Warrior. And it's interesting, if you beefed out with Vince McMahon, that Linda McMahon would do that. Could it be that she was his handler? And you know she played a part in politics. She ran for, I believe it was governor of Connecticut. And yeah, and and we know that WWE, I remember growing up, WWF being rooted in connect, I cut, or, which is an odd little word now, isn't it? Connect is the opposite of to cut. And you put an I in the middle. Connect, I, cut. And we call it Connecticut. Didn't have to show you that one. So yeah, we could do a spelling thing over the airwaves. I was wondering that with my sister in Cali. The radio program. Lord have mercy, the name of it is escaping me now. Jeez, Mo Nelly. Sister Lois. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's early. It's either early or it's late. But anyway, New Haven. Maybe thinking about a haven, a rest haven for, no. Maybe think about a haven being something connected oftentimes to where you hide something. Okay? Or protect something. And that, of course, would be a place where witches and witchcraft would be maybe safely hidden in a haven. So was it a new haven for that? In New England, where witchcraft at the time was running rampant, very near Boston and whatnot. But, you know, that was one of the headquarters for the World Wrestling Federation. Now, Sunday at WrestleMania, Undertaker was beaten. He had a 21-0 streak. Okay, 21. We just did some videos on this, and ironically with the plane being missing and all of the sevens involved in that, the 21-0 streak became 21-1, which is 22, which represents duality, 2 and 2. See that? And of course the 21-0 blackjack, 21-777. And he was beaten by Brock Lesnar, who has what tattooed on his back? A goat skull. You can't make this stuff up. So on the Monday night after WrestleMania is always a big deal too. It's said that Ultimate Warrior makes a very cryptic speech, and he ends up dying on Tuesday. Now, of course, he did the controversial YouTube videos outing the sex ritual, the homo-sex ritual. That one seemed to be tampered with, but the others they let fly because soap operas operate off of controversy. Jerry Springer's show and Steve Wilkos and Maury, that's another form of ghetto soap opera. You know, you watching to see what's going to happen, you know. It's a way to keep you emotionally invested and to cause you to put in energy, like that Twilight energy we were talking about, in between wanting to know what happened and finding out what happened. There's that energy, that Twilight energy. Believe it. Now, Ultimate Warrior said he, in his outing videos, he blamed Hogan and said that Hogan was responsible for breaking up Macho Man and Elizabeth. Interesting notes on Macho Man too, who I also believe was a ritual sacrifice the first second I heard it. Now, Macho Man, I liked it, Macho Man. I'm sorry. We all liked it, Macho Man. I couldn't wait to get me a Macho Man figure when I had him. And, you know, the figures, the idols. I had little idols of these little wrestling men. Lord have mercy, the mind control programming. Help us all. But anyway, Ultimate Warrior also said that Hogan and Linda had an open marriage, which would lend some credence to some of what Linda said about Hulk and Brutus Beefcake, who I never liked and always thought was a sweet thing. And Ultimate Warrior said he said, I was the only guy who didn't want to sample your wife, talking to Hogan. And I could see Hogan get involved in that. His lust for power in Hollywood got him in the movie too. So he was willing to do the casting couch. Ouch. Before Randy Savage died, Hogan threw him under the bus in an interview not long before Macho Man mysteriously catches a heart attack in a 2011 car crash. A heart attack at the wheel. So when you hear about collapsing and heart attacks, I think about HARP attacks, and I think about electronic weapons, their ability to stop the heart like they did with Tim Russert. Look up the suspicious stuff surrounding Tim Russert's death. That's the man who asked, when you see the clips of Kerry and Bush getting asked about the Skull and Bones live on, what's the name of that show? Meet the Press. That was Tim Russert asking those questions, and not very long after that, they put him together. Vince and Macho Man weren't on good terms. It was rumored that Macho Man slept with Stephanie McMahon when she was a minor. Macho Man was also in Spider-Man and jumped ship to the WCW and breached his contract, like a lot of them did. So we had a little short discussion about WCW, and we almost through with this, believe it. And WCW was the controlled opposition to the WWF at one time. So did McMahon sacrifice his dad? His dad wanted to, he wanted the game to be fair. He didn't want to mix and mingle things up with the one world order type of deal. Excuse me. And perhaps because he had friends who were involved in starting their own wrestling organizations and whatnot. Well, Vince McMahon ended up swallowing all of those up, and then his father dying in the midst of that. So did McMahon sacrifice his dad? He seemed like the type of dude that would sacrifice his mom. But before Monday Night Raw, or Saturday Night Raw, whatever they call it, before it was Raw, it was called Monday Night War. And again, we have this duality thing because wrestlers, like rappers, are people who live double lives. And in order to effectively live a double life and really go deep cover like that mentally, you have to be under the MK Ultra umbrella. And when you're placed, umbrella, Ella, and when you're placed in front of, I hated that song, it was so mind controlling, and about Project Umbrella, which was the, excuse me, that's the music leg, the entertainment leg, primarily music, but the entertainment umbrella, really and truly, of MK Ultra. So Monday Night War becomes Monday Night Raw, controlled opposition. Ted Turner had his hands on that as well, on the WCW thing. Of course, it was big in the ATL, which we know is Atlantis, and a city steeped in New World Order and mind control, imagery and control and monuments and street names and everything. So the WCW was always really connected, as McMahon needed the appearance of competition. The WCW had the NWO. Hogan also had went there to become a bad guy. And Hulk Hogan was always a part of this mind control family, and would not be let go to just go somewhere else. That ain't how mind control work. Where they do that at? Not there. So he turned on Randy Savage in the hookup, in the wrestling thing. And then, of course, in real life, prior to Macho Man's death, Macho Man Randy Savage's death, Hogan turned on him in an interview. And there's a way that life really imitates art when it comes to this particular mind control genre. And here's a great example of that, and then we're going to be out of here. Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit. Now, I remember when I was coming up, Kevin Sullivan was known. He was the Isham of wrestling. He was known as the satanic dude in the wrestling hookup, an openly satanic guy. I remember reading his interviews and whatnot in different magazines, Pro Wrestling Illustrated and stuff, and he was openly satanic. And I just believe that that was the key to him being such a down player in the wrestling game, that they moved him up from simply wrestling to writing. You know, and I'm sure age and everything played a part, and maybe he just wanted to move up the ladder. And I'm sure he did the due diligence and got his sacrifices together, and they moved him on up. Where we moving on up, and he moved on up to the wrong side. So Chris Benoit was in the WCW. Kevin Sullivan was married. This is when Chris Benoit was in the WCW. By the time he killed himself, my understanding is he was in the WWF or WWE as it is now. But Chris Benoit was in the WCW at the time, and Kevin Sullivan was a writer for the WCW. Kevin Sullivan, this satanic wrestler, openly satanic wrestler, was married to a woman who would later be Benoit's wife. And isn't it interesting if Jake the Snake himself took that imagery? Because if I remember correctly, he wasn't Jake the Snake before. But as wrestlers came to the WWF, they changed over. Ted DiBiase was not the $1 Million Man, but he came there and became the $1 Million Man, perhaps because money was his thing. And, you know, he was flamboyant with his money. You know, Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase, these was your original flossers, but it had to do with po folks getting some money. The same thing, the same way Baby and them went stupid and out of their minds, and embarrassingly so, nigger rich as they call it. They clown when they got some money, the same way that these guys clown when they got some money. And it's part of mind control, part of the way that you can be controlled by your lusts, by the things that sometimes are kept away from you. Same thing with the pride and the I'm proud of Egypt and whatnot. And to my good sister and friend, fan of MJ the King, who brought up the point that, well, you know, you can understand why folks be proud when they find out about the pyramids and blah 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 after being told that you're nothing and blah blah blah. Well, that's overplay for the underlay, though, when in reality you're not really helping yourself by being proud. You still in a delusion. It's like I'm starving you just to give you a meal laced with arsenic. You're gonna really want it because you've been starved on purpose, and it's not right to be starved, but it's not right to give you poisonous food to replenish your energy and quench your appetite. So that's what that's like to me. And you know, I hate when people say to me, that means you're talking out of opinion, but that is what that is like. That's what it's done for. That's why it's chess on the chessboard, the black and white, not checkers, because it is a strategic thing. It's to keep something away from you for so long that when they give you what you think you want, it's tainted. And that's a game. It's something to take no pride in whatsoever when you really research it and you find out that it's all lies. If you take pride in a lie, I mean, how beneficial is that? If you take pride in creating the system that the governments, that the Babylonian systems of this world use as their model, something wrong with that. If you take pride in taking a witchcraft and demon-influenced culture and uplifting it and saying it's yours, there's something wrong with that. So again, it's just a part of the whole trick bag that they purposely give you a false history and keep you away from something that you know you think you want, only to be sure that when you get it, it'll kill you. And that's game 101, really 202. That ain't lightweight, jamming, but that's how that works. So anyway, and you know, I digress, but I said it to say that, you know, you see Jake the Snake with his snake, or Ted DiBiase with his money, and remember how they were before they came to the WWE. It shows you it's something going on when you climb up the ladders in the wrestling world, just like in any other facet of entertainment. And what it is they let you into the Luciferian secret, and the Luciferian secret, once you know it, will make you look at things a little different. Ted DiBiase looked at the money, and maybe Jake the Snake was more of a philosophical dude, and he looked at the serpent, at the snake. And look at him again. Look at him today. So Kevin Sullivan was the Crowley of wrestling. So he was writing scripts for wrestling. So Sullivan was a writer, and in the script, he put his wife with Benoit in the script. Sullivan wrote this into the script, and then it happened in real life. Benoit ends up with Kevin Sullivan's wife, either as a part of handling Benoit and keeping him under control, or as a real result of the fact that you're dealing in something demonic, and the demonic world will jam you up. The devil's going to make sure you get jammed up in the end. That's how he ensures that he keeps his title as the devil. Otherwise, he'd be God if it's all good for you in the end. That's why you have to end up like Jake the Snake, or end up like Kevin Sullivan losing his wife, or Chris Benoit losing his life. And of course, Sullivan also wrote into the script that he would feud with Benoit, and all of this was facilitated in real life. So, art imitating life in the duality, mind control world of wrestling. And I found it also interesting, one last thing, going along with the homoerotic energy that wrestling is to produce in young males. In the wide world of sexual AIDS, when I was a young dude and reading porno magazines, I read the articles and the ads and everything. And I remember the first time I heard the word Benoit. There are beads used in anal sex, and that's enough. So Chris Benoit, who may have had those workings done, I'm sure he had those workings done on him, and he had some secrets to keep. He ends up strangling her, Kevin Sullivan's ex-woman, wife, and their son. And the next day he was found hung on his weight machine. All three of them was found at the same time, but they said that he hung himself the next day. So he had some sort of satanic blackout, or she threatened to let something be known. And so just keep yourself out of the mind control zone. Remember that these spells work by your not knowing. When people say, well, voodoo only works if you believe in it, they're a lie, or they don't know what they're talking about. It works by your not knowing. Knowing is half the battle, and doing is the other half. But our people perish for lack of knowledge. So know. Don't sit there and veg out and look at wrestling. Don't sit there and veg out and look at nothing. Don't watch a movie, sit there and veg out. Or you end up like them girls Max Julian was showing that movie too. Because it's all about mind control, programming. And of course, if your mind is open and wide open, and you sitting there in the trance state, in the twilight state of in-between consciousness and unconsciousness, you will be hypnotized. Don't. So for my Detroit players, and for people everywhere, and for all the viewers and the members of the temple, I thank you for allowing us to turn something deep out of something simple. And that'll be all. Thanks, y'all. Shalom. B'Hashem HaMashiach Yahavashah, the true and living Almighty God, to whom I give all of the honor, the praise, and the glory. Mandatory. And that's a calculator. You can count on that.